So today we're going to talk about Gantt charts. Yay! First, I'm going to explain my syntax, and instead of going through it and running it, like by each section, I'm just going to run, whenever I'm done explaining it, I'm going to run all of it at once so then I can talk about the output. So I'm just going to go through the syntax, then I'm going to run all of it, and then I'll talk about what the chart says. So a Gantt chart is something that you can use to manage projects, and it's basically kind of like a timeline thing with bars, and it'll be easier to explain with the output, but it's really helpful for managing dates on projects. And you can really easily do this in R. You can actually change it to where like there's times on it. You can change it to days. You can change it to months. And so, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all there is to say about it. I mean, this one's going to be pretty basic. Reshape 2 is going to help transform the data and from the wide to long formats, which we talked about in class like a long time ago, like the rows on the top and the columns, or the rows and the columns being like switched or whatever, and how that's formatted. So that's basically what that is. And then the ggplot function is, of course, what we use to create graphs, visuals, charts, all of that stuff. So those are the two main packages that you need to run or to make your Gantt chart. Oh, look, I did it. I did it because I'm so used to doing it. Okay, anyways. The next thing that we're going to do is create the tasks that are going to go into the Gantt chart. So this is where you use the cbind function, which we've used a lot in the past. So this is what you're specifying and like what you're putting in there, and this is what it's going to be established as in R. So this is basically like the variable, which would be analogous to like stuff that we've done in other assignments, and I guess it's technically a variable here too, but I guess it's more of a vector, as they call it. And this is like what's going to be combined to form this. So my first task, and this is about my dissertation, by the way, I forgot to say that. So I've got like a layout of how my dissertation is going to go, the steps for that. So the first thing that I'm going to do is gather more literature for my method, as we discussed in class. And the dates that I'm going to do this are the 2nd of October through the 9th of October. So I've got mine basically week by week is how I'm going to do it. And I'm going to be using the assignment due dates to do that. The next thing that I'm going to do is flesh out the analyses, or flesh out the outline, and that's going to be done the 9th of October through the 16th of October. You can change your Gantt chart, how these are displayed. I didn't do that here, but there is a way to do it. But I didn't want to do that here because I wanted to go by weeks. So yeah. And also you can change it down here the way that it's specified, which I'll go over in a second. So we have all these tasks here. We have a total of 9 tasks. And all of this stuff has been combined to form the vectors that are called tasks. So now all of this information is going to be stored in this. Now I'm going to create the data frame. The DF stands for data frame, and that's what I'm going to actually call it. And then all of this function is basically specifying, well, it does a lot of stuff. The as data frame is just the generic function in R that returns a data frame. The sapply is a different version of the lapply that returns the matrix or an array of vectors. It's supposedly like more user-friendly, the coding for it. And then melt, which we've used before, is going to literally, like, it melts everything together. And then the parse function is going to convert expression as an input, and the eval function is going to evaluate that and, sorry, I'm about to cough, and calculate the result of that expression for the value specified. So here, that would mean, hang on, let me find it. Eval, where was it? I just saw it. Oh, there it is. So this function is, okay, so this function is converting the text to an input. And here we have the text as x, which is the variable. And then row names are false is because we want to remove the display of row names because that's not really, like, that's not how the Gantt chart is, like, that's not how we want it to look. So we have specified that value. Yeah, oh, and here's our task and date right here. That's what this is. So this is like what you type in. This is according to this stuff that you made up here. So we've created this. And so we're going to go down here and we're going to bind it together using the data frame function again, and then we're going to list all of our tasks right here. So this came from this up here. These are all the tasks specified in the rbind function, and that's all going to go into our data frame. So this was basically us creating the data from these vectors that we made up here and specifying those within the functions that we want. So we also need, we're also using the cbind function again here. In the chart, it's going to have the task start and end, so that's just like what it is, the start date and the end date. Now we're factoring our, oh shit, stop. We're factoring that and using the asDate data frame function again, or wait, that's the asDate function. So this is basically going to put the start date with the data frame and the end date in our data frame. So that's what this is doing. It's creating the start, end dates, and the tasks in the chart. So then we're going to use the melt function to, and the cbind function to put all of that stuff together. And then we are going to create the plot. So the start date is going to begin the plot. Now we're making that an object. The asDate function is going to convert the, it's going to convert between character representations and objects of the class date representing the actual calendar date. So that's why that's specified here. So here's the start date. This is the start date of the whole entire chart, and that's why it's specified within the vector start date. Okay, so here we have some more code. Excuse me. We're using so here's where ggplot comes in. So this whole entire thing is the code for the actual chart. This is where it like starts, and this is everything before that was getting like the data ready. So this stuff is actually creating the visual. So the melt function is going to be used to melt the object that we made earlier, the data frame object, into the ggplot. So this is basically telling ggplot to take all of this stuff and put it into a visual. These are the aesthetics, and it's going to map the task data to the visual and the geom that we're creating by the ggplot function. The geom line is basically us drawing the object using code. So this is where we specify the size that we want it to be. And then the labs function is labels. So we want it to be called a very nice dissertation Gantt chart. X and Y are blank because you don't really have like X and Y, like traditional X and Y axes in this kind of chart. The theme function is going to affect the colors of it, and this is going to affect the size of it. So I kind of played around with the sizes so that whenever I run it, if I stretch it out, it can fit in there. There's lots of different themes. They're all pretty ugly from what I saw. So you can have like theme underscore gray is going to give us like a gray theme. And then theme underscore there's one where it's like there's nothing there, like it's not a theme, and it's just like everything's very, very plain. So I tried that out and it was ugly too. So here, this part of the syntax is where you start putting in like what you want your text to be, where you want it to be at, and what colors the lines are going to be. So each of these element lines are going to be blue, and they're going to be dashed, specified here. So the panel grid is going to be, it's basically the code for the panels within the chart. Like the blank spaces that you're going to see between the lines. Maybe it would have been a better idea if I did run it, but I just didn't think that at the beginning, but maybe now. I'll just run it real quick in case I can like use it to better explain. Okay, so here we go. It's very nice. What's the rest of this? Yeah, so you can see that there's not like a typical X and Y axis on here. These dates are kind of smushed together. They won't be in a minute because you just have to stretch it out more. These the panel grid minor and panel grid major, that's these in between the lines where I specified dashed and blue. The element text angle, this right here, is what makes this angled a little bit. So if you change this to be more, it's going to be more angled, and if you change it to be a lower number, it's going to be less angled. Then we have the scale x date function, which is where you can specify how your dates are going to show up, like what I was talking about earlier. So I have 1 week here, which you can see as soon as I stretch it out that code basically separates each of these by 1 week. And you could, if you wanted to, you could have September 2019, October 2019, November 2019, but obviously that depends on, the dates that you have set for your deadlines and whatnot. So that's the date breaks function. This right here was really confusing to me at first. Whenever I first looked at this, I was like, what is that? But it's actually just where you specify like what you want the text to look like for, like down here. Like I put that I wanted the month to be abbreviated, so that's why September it's not drawn all the way out. It's just Sep. Anyways, that's pretty much it. I'll zoom in on this to talk a little bit about what it's saying. So again, we have the first week going to be working on the part 2 of the methods gathering. The next thing from October 9th to October 16th is going to be the method and flesh analyses, and then it just goes up like this. So the longer the bars are, the more time you're going to be spending on something. So each of these blocks are a week. And then you get here, and you're not spending as much time on the IRB or the syntax areas. But then after the class is over, I'm going to revisit my introduction and try to get that more fleshed out. And that's going to take me a couple of weeks to do, as you can see here. And then it's off to Frank right after that. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm going to be doing. Over.